What brings you here today? What brings us here today? Now, I ask this question because there are many in our world in this time where going to church isn't really part of many people's lives. So some of us may have come because our children or our grandchildren were singing. Some of us have come because it's part of the rhythm and the tradition of our lives, that worship means something to us. Maybe we want to spend the time hearing music, praying, or maybe hear the old stories again. But whatever reason that we find ourselves here, surrounded by greens and lights and candles and flowers, it's my hope that we might be able to find some deeper meaning for our lives and for our continually growing faith. That's what the prophecies and the gospel stories are for. To help us find what God has promised us from the beginning. To be with us, to guide us, to know us and love us, to bless us in our belief. Now, I have to admit, these last 4 weeks of Advent haven't really touched on the scene that kind of grows up over days in Bethlehem. The prophets Zephaniah, Micah, Isaiah, and Malachi have all foretold the coming of a leader in one shape or another. A leader who's a shepherd or a king or a savior. And for the people of the book, the people of Israel, these words gave them hope, something to look forward to with expectation. But we haven't been steeped in the Old Testament stories as they must have been. So we have to get closer to Bethlehem to find that meaning for ourselves. And as we do, I invite you to imagine yourself, where you might find yourself in the stories of the people that come to that little stable in Bethlehem. Now, there's a challenge, though. There always is a challenge. That image of the nativity scene, like we have displayed over here on the piano, it won't seem very neatly ordered. Life back then, just as it is now, is messy, complicated, and difficult. Modern we may be, but we have the same desires and fears, the same hopes and the needs as everyone else. So first, we think about Mary. She's a devout young woman. We're not really ever sure of her age, but she's a young adult who wakes up to find the fierce brightness of an angel standing over her, and her heart is pounding with fear, and yet courage gives her the voice enough to ask, what the heck is going on? And when the angel was gone, she realized that she would be on a mission from God. She was to be the God-bearer to the world. It's wonderful. She's blessed and OMG pregnant. She then would probably face stigma or humiliation. And she was promised to marry Joseph. Should she just go and hide? And then there's Joseph, we are told, who is much older than Mary. In some art, he's portrayed as an older man with a beard, and white beard and hair. And he had gotten the message, the word had gone out that everyone needed to go back to their home places to be registered for this census, kind of like we do every 10 years in this country. And so Joseph had a trip ahead of him. Would he be going alone? Or with Mary? He had a choice. Wrestling with decision, and as he wrestled, an angel paid a visit to him one night. And in that dream, that visit helped him decide to stand by Mary. But what was this message that he received about taking the baby out of the country after it was born? There's There's a lot of uncertainty and fear, but duty first. And then we have Elizabeth that we meet today. Elizabeth and Zechariah, they were an older couple and yet never had a child of their own. And serving as a priest, Zechariah was also visited by an angel, none other than Gabriel. And guess what his news was? That Elizabeth was going to have a child who would be special and pave the way for someone even greater. Zechariah was struck dumb with disbelief, literally. This only happens in stories, right? He thought. Abraham and Sarah, she was long past childbearing age and she had a child. Can you imagine, since Zechariah was literally struck dumb for the whole time that this child was in the womb, can you imagine the charades that he had to play out to try and explain this to his wife, to Elizabeth? A late-in-life baby was coming. Very late in life. Well, I think God's angels in this time were getting a workout because they also visited shepherds that were tending their flocks by night on a hillside. Out there, the men and the boys were watching over their sheep and listening for threats to the flock. And in the darkness, it was easy to talk to each other. They knew each other. They knew each other's stories and fears and hopes. They knew their job. They talked about their lives, they told jokes, they complained about the taxes from Rome, away from prying eyes. But their eyes and their ears were always at the ready for something out of the ordinary. So the visitation of the heavenly host had those courageous men on their knees. They too, they knew the prophecies. Bethlehem would be at the heart of a revolution. Could this be it? Could this be the time? Or was this just a really good joke? With the idea that it was probably a little bit of both, they gathered their flocks and they headed in toward the city where they could see a new star shining. The star. It caught the attention of some astrologers as well from another land. These astrologers have been called wise men, magi, and for them the stars and their constellations, they had meaning. How they moved and when they appeared said something about humankind. And when this new star appeared, one of them remembered the oracle of Balaam that said a star would come out of Jacob, and it heralded a new king out of Israel. So they took a little sabbatical, went on a road trip, and they followed the star. There was no room at the inn. Mary and Joseph made their beds in a stable, and that's where the angels and the shepherds and eventually the Magi found them. And in that place were people just like you and I. As a woman feeling blessed by the coming of a child, but fearful at the same time. There was a man heavy with responsibility and a secret knowledge that life was just going to get more complicated. They were tenders of sheep, the lowest in society's view, certain that life was hard and you had to be ready just to take things as they came. There were wise astrologers with inquiring minds, always watchful for the new, for the hopeful that the stars would bring good omens as well as bad. In that place, all the prophecies were echoing from the Hebrew Scriptures, and they came true. I'm sending my messenger to prepare the way before me. A virgin shall conceive and bear a son. Out of Egypt I called my son, and a star shall come out of Jacob. He has sent me to bring good news to the oppressed. For unto us a child is born, and his name shall be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, And in our reading today, Bethlehem, the least among the rulers of Judah. And the Gospel of Matthew sums all these prophecies up to say all this took place to fulfill what had been spoken by the Lord through the prophets. In that place, in this place, God's promises were fulfilled. It took a generation for them to play out, and it has been centuries in the telling. And today, in our hearing, no matter who we are or where we are in our faith, God comes to us. In our hopes, in our fears, in our desires and longings, is Emmanuel, God with us. May we be like Mary, be blessed in our belief. May we be like Joseph, strong in his conviction. May we be simple like the shepherds and wise like the Magi. And may we always be like the Christ child, bringing light and life into our world.